Welcome, reanimated fans, to this week's episode. I'm H.A. Conrad, here in the midst of a bomb cyclone on the East Coast. I am here, as always, with my intrepid co-host, Stuart Tiffin. Hello, Stuart.
Hey, g'day.
And our special guest star, Kyle Diaz, for this particular round of recaps for All of Us Are Dead. And we're going to talk about the final 3 episodes and a couple of news items before we get into that. But welcome, Kyle. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. So we're going to get into the final 3. Got a lot to talk about on that point. But before that, I know Kyle's favorite news items are
I'll just go ahead and mute the microphone for a couple of minutes while we talk about all the Walking Dead news.
I know. But we'll make it quick. But basically, the big news this week was that they announced that there was going to be a Maggie Negan spinoff. And it is taking place in New York, which obviously I'm pretty excited about.
The city of New York?
Yes, supposedly they're going to be in Manhattan. So I'm actually, I'm pretty excited for a variety of reasons, but I'm hoping that it means they're going to be filming up here. So that could be fun.
Isle of the Dead is the working title, or perhaps the actual title.
Yeah, I think so. Jeffrey Dean Morgan put up that particular photo and had a bunch of stuff on his Instagram. So that's pretty cool. And then in older news items, we didn't catch this before. I guess I missed it, but apparently Norman Reedus is going to be developing a fantasy series with the Frouds, who are Jim Henson's crew. And I don't know if it's like Muppet-like, Fraggle-like things, but I think that's coming down the line. They announced that in February, but I never saw the headline. It just popped up this week.
So is our takeaway from this that he can do that and the other spinoff that he's supposed to be in with Carol?
I think so. I don't think that, Fraggles are going to take up all of his time. But, he's a multifaceted actor, and just maybe he wants to establish that he's going to be doing other stuff other than Walking Dead, because, man, that's got to be tiring after so many years. So, so I'm looking forward to reviewing some of that with you, Stuart. I know better than to ask you, Kyle. But
I will say that, ever since episode 2, when there was that tank scene in Atlanta, The Walking Dead has been so rural as far as I know from even the seasons that I haven't seen. So it seems like a good idea to go back to some sort of urban center instead of just wandering around like in the Georgia woods, some more. It'll be a nice change of pace. Yeah. I don't know anything about Fear the Walking Dead, which maybe is set in LA or something.
Oh, it was originally. And the main show did go back to Atlanta for half a season, but they didn't stick around in the city. That's for sure.
Right. And I mean, I just think it's kind of cool to see some of those things and to see how in the urban landscape things are being handled. And even with the world beyond, we were all excited to see a little bit more of that. And they just kind of ended up in, the Midwest for most of it, or in the, not or in upstate New York. So I'm kind of excited to see what they do with that. And, looking forward to reviewing that when it comes out. And we do have a lot of Fear the Walking Dead things to catch up on, but
it's honestly starting to give me agita. HA is knowing how much Fear the Walking Dead we have to catch up on, and the Prime show is back, and I'm just like, oh my God, I have so much to do.
It's okay. We'll figure it out. Okay. But before, let's table that until another time when Kyle's not with us. I don't want to bore him or make him upset.
Do not upset Kyle. You don't like Kyle when he's angry.
But you had one more headline you found, or one more news item.
This is kind of goofy. It's from Japan Today, which I don't know how what kind of news source this is. They actually seem to report on a wide variety of things, but one of these articles where it's like, oh, town in X part of country, insert country name here, has zombie themed something, which is, you see these all the time, but I had never seen one in Japan before, so I thought, let's click and see what it looks like, and then it takes you to it's kind of confusingly written is the downside. There is a YouTube video on this link. The headline is "Rural Japanese Town Overrun with Elderly Zombies in Attempt to Control Wild Boar Population." And honestly, they had me at the headline. That is a crazy headline because first of all, elderly zombies, and second of all, wild boar. I was just like, what? How do these two things intersect? Show me the Venn diagram. And apparently,
So I should note here that I saw the same headline and thought this might be malware or something bad. So I didn't click on it.
Did an AI write this?
Because it was so outrageous that I didn't really believe that it was a true news article. So I just think it's funny that we had two very different reactions to said headline.
I ran toward the flame. You smartly ran away. It's not malware. I should say that. Or at least I don't think it is. My computer could be dying a slow death right now. But this town in Japan is called Matsuzaki, and it has been running a zombie camp. I'll put that in air quotes since 2014. And the reason for this town of 6,000 to host a zombie, it's like zombie glamping, I think. The reason they've been doing this is actually just to scare away the deer and wild boar that live around their town from their, I don't know what sakura mochi leaves, how they're grown, if they're grown in like a farmer's field sort of situation, or if they're like something else, but that's what they're trying to protect. So I think they just want to have a bunch of people there at some part of their growing season to scare away the wildlife. And like,
oh no, I actually think you're misunderstanding this very confusing article, Stuart. I think that the zombie camp is a lure for tourists to come, and then one of the other activities that tourists can do while they're there is hunting, and that controls the deer and wild boar population.
It does say hunting. Okay.
But now that there are fewer tourists coming, there are fewer people doing hunting as an adjunct activity to the zombie glamping. And so there's fewer hunters to control the deer and wild boar.
But they're actually, not ironically, combining a zombie camp with actual hunting.
Yes.
Yeah, this has some issues. But I mean, I don't know if you've watched the YouTube video, which is like a found footage style or like, vlog style man trying to survive in a zombie apocalypse. It's like 20 minutes long or something. It's not bad, but it's all in Japanese. So unless you read or speak Japanese, you're not going to really get it's just a zombie hunting thing. So, and there's some sort of mystery you're supposed to solve too. So, yeah.
The one little button I'll put on this is that my wife is Japanese and her family lives in Tokyo. So pre-pandemic, we went back on a very regular basis, and we would usually take a couple of days to travel somewhere outside of Tokyo. And for a while, we did like the big hits, like Nara and Kyoto and stuff like that. But we kind of ran out of like the really mega touristy places and just started going to little towns or small places that are a little bit off the beaten path for foreign travelers. And it's highly recommended. There's like something to do, or a beautiful little village, or a bizarre zombie experience, or incredible food, or whatever, tucked away all over rural Japan. So, consider this or any of the literally thousands of other off the beaten path places you could travel when you go to Japan, because it's a lot more than just like the big 3 or 4 cities that everybody hits.
Oh yeah, my friend Moira did this, and weirdly, this is the one time I've been to Japan, and we went over, and she's from Canada, and she by happenstance was going to be over there, so we overlapped with her for about 12 hours in Tokyo, but then she went. And basically, she kind of does this. She's one of these really amazing travelers who like will go solo traveling. And so she hit like a lot of different places that we didn't get to just because we were time limited, but she was over there for almost a month or so and just kind of touring around. And just some of the photos and experiences she had were pretty awesome. So I'm envious of that. And also on a lighter note, she basically did reviews. She had like a week where she only ate things out of vending machines, and she did reviews and like didn't know what the things were. And she had them rated by like texture and consistency and temperature, etc. So anyway, I don't know if I'll send you all the link if it's still up, but it's pretty amazing. And she also did some of the capsule hotels, which seemed pretty cool.
That's
So
awesome. I've never stayed in the capsule hotel. Like that just gets me to release.
yeah, I'll leave it to you. They do too. A little too claustrophobic. I have a slight amount of claustrophobia, so I don't think I could do it.
Even a normal Japanese hotel room is like
They're pretty
it's
small.
extremely
Yeah,
small.
yeah, yeah. But anyway, but no, I agree with you, Kyle. I'm definitely on board with that thing. So that is one thing I'm missing during the pandemic is the travel piece. So I would love to go back someday.
Yeah.
Well, that does kind of wrap up the news. So are you guys ready to finish up All
Rumble?
of Us Are Dead?
Yes, of course.
Can I ask a quick priming question for the beginning of episode 10? When we left off last time, we were like, okay, there's Chang-Sen's mom. The kids are all like crawling around under that pipe truck. He's the only one who's looking at her. We were like, what's going to happen next? Is Soju going to come in and save the day? Is it going to be Hari? Who on their bingo card had Chang-Sen start screaming and summoning all the zombies to where they are?
I did not. And I actually also, because I think Kyle was the one who had said that he thought that, or maybe it was you, Stuart, that had said that they thought the archery team would come in here. And I kind of thought that too.
They came in just a little bit later.
Yeah.
They didn't meet up for a while later.
They still had a clutch save, but it was not at this part. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And I did think it was pretty like horrible and rough and traumatic because everybody didn't know that was his mom. Obviously, they just thought it was another zombie. So that was pretty rough. And Daisu just thought he was trying to save him, and it's his mom. And then there's like that moment, the really awkward moment where they're all like looking at him, and he's like, "Mom." Pretty rough.
Again, one of these scenes it's one of these scenes where somebody is doing something that is clearly like the wrong thing to do, but nobody is trying to stop him. Anjo, I get it. She knows what's going on here, but Bearsu is just kind of like letting the screaming go. I mean, he's ruining their escape attempt. Somebody, I feel like, should have the presence of mind to shut him up.
All right, but can we talk about the fact that he does a lot of screaming throughout this episode and some of the next episode?
It's kind of his calling card in the next one.
It's just kind of what he's doing. And also all of the, like, not all of them, but there's a lot of screaming from people who should know better, right? So I don't know, that was kind of driving me crazy.
I mean, they're all in the throes of dehydration induced delirium at the moment. So
they should be. They have no sustenance.
Well, they've had Kyle, you're forgetting that they all had their mouths open for the rainwater.
For the rain.
There we go.
But they finally get Chang-Sen to he says mom. Everybody has that shocked look on their face, and then they start to move away, dragging Chang-Sen along, and he's still yelling as they're leaving, like, yes, please ring the dinner bell somewhere. But when they get up a little ramp, and I've completely lost track of where they are in like the geography of the school campus. God, what's her name? Is it Hyo Ryong or Ryo Hyung? I get her consonants mixed up. I think it might be Hyo Ryong. She falls down, right? And Jimin goes back to pick her up and then sees a zombie and does something. Is this in her character? I don't know. I guess she hasn't really been in this situation because those two girls have never been alone with a zombie before. So we haven't seen her react this way. But Jimin thinks about helping her up and then leaves her and runs off into the bushes. And where she makes an even stranger decision is she goes back downhill, which is back toward the school proper. Although we don't see what happens to her until later.
Right. But I was like, the minute that this happened, I said, oh, well, she's gonna have to die.
Like the show has been so karmically kind of blunt, and it happens again here where she abandons her friend and immediately gets separated from the rest of the folks, and as we see in a couple scenes later, gets bitten by many zombies.
Yeah, but is that a conscious decision on her part to run into the woods or down that hill instead of after her friends? It doesn't seem to make any sense. So I'm not sure. I think they have to try and slice down this cast. We're still at like nine or 11 kids or something. And they wanted to have her killed. They do it for this karmic reason, but it doesn't ring completely true. Because Jimin has seems to have had a moral compass going so far in the show. So it's weird that she would betray who is one of her closer friends.
I think they just were trying to imply that she panicked and got
too
panicked,
scared. Yeah.
and that even is supposed to be why she runs in the other direction. I
Yeah.
mean, she may have some guilt too, but I think she's just absolutely panicked, and she is one of the screamers that just brings everybody, all the zombies coming running to eat her. And it's kind of incredible that she manages to not get bitten earlier. And
While
you know,
she's standing in the football field, you mean, when she's just crying and they're like,
but even before that, they have her like splat. I will say, like, I thought it was pretty effective, the panic and having her just kind of blindly running and falling and stuff like that. And I have to hand it to this actor for this must have been a pretty rough sequence of scenes to film, and I don't know how many times they had to do it, but when she ends up in the water and they're all coming after her, I thought that was pretty incredible, and you can get the sense of the chaos and how shocked she might be, and they did a really good job. However, she's not given the fact that she's been scrambling around the mud and dirt and rain. She's a lot cleaner than she should be by the time she gets to the football field.
Sure,
but I'll let them have it. I don't know.
Another funny outcome of this, other than it's not funny. She's a zombie. She gets bit, right? Nobody ever mentions her name ever again.
No, nobody even asks where she is. It's like, oh.
There's just so Woojin flies in from off screen and saves Hyo Ryong, and then Hari saves the two of them from approaching zombies as the archery team and our classroom team are finally united, right? But yeah, nobody.
Right. And it's a pretty good entrance with Hari.
Yeah, it's the clutch entrance we were hoping for just down the hill earlier. But that's fine. That might have set Zhang San off in a whole other decibel rating if she'd actually put an arrow in Zhang San's mom's head.
Yeah.
But they're reunited, and then they kind of run together to this auditorium, which we haven't, or a gym that we haven't seen before. Jimin, forgotten by all, left to her fate because don't screw up on the show or you're done. Yeah, so once inside this gym, Namra has you can see that there's stuff in there, right? Like, it's dark, but you can see that there are shapes.
Yep.
And Namra is like, let's get out of here. And then the lightning flashes and you see the entire volleyball team.
Yep.
And I guess they were playing volleyball at lunchtime.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's like a gym class or something. Yeah.
During the lunch hour, maybe. But so they're all in their volleyball clothes. And it's a bad scene. They have to so yeah, the tall guy with the hair, the bangs, gets locked out in the vestibule, or at least gets there for safety. The big dude kind of sacrifices himself so that G-Men won't stay with him, and they all run into an equipment locker, basically, right?
Yeah. And he, there was they've been carting him along in his little stretcher for a bit, and he's just that's Jun's son, I think. And Mijin is really upset watching him die. And there was a thing before them when they were dragging him along, and she asked him if he would date her, and he's like, no. So
that's so weird.
It's very strange.
There's
but
context there, I'm sure, that we're not understanding.
But I feel like there's a couple. There's the karmic zombie the karmic zombie attacks, where people do something wrong, but then there's the heroic sacrifice, and even he's basically, as he's on his stretcher, telling them all to run and to keep running, and so he is one of those.
And he flops off the cart, right, which is his final act. But then he's actually holding on to a bunch of zombies and really trying to get them to come to him. But yeah, this is a moment of growth for Mijin, I guess, because she has been quite callous in previous scenes. She killed that other girl and this guy has been throwing shade at her for it. He's like, you killed her and she was nice and you don't care about anybody. And so
I will say that Mijin's whole character just is from top to bottom, beginning to end, like such a cipher to me. Like I truly do not understand most of the stuff that she talks about or is worried about, or
like in these 3 episodes.
yeah,
Yeah.
like throughout the whole season, but like especially right now, like she's about to get really obsessed with like going to college again, and being a senior, and she talks about being a senior
Yeah.
constantly, and all her like stuff with Hari about the archery stuff, and it just there's a huge like cultural context missing for specifically that character that I didn't necessarily feel with a lot of the other characters on the show, but a lot of the stuff that she's talking about, I'm just like, what are you talking about right now?
Yeah, I agree with that
Yeah.
because
Well, I kind of felt like with what they were doing with her, she's the character that brings up mundane and inane stuff because it's too stressful and upsetting to actually deal with what's happening.
I mean, I don't know.
That's
HA, the next episode, she says, try being a senior. You think being in a zombie apocalypse is bad?
Yeah.
exactly.
Like,
That's my point. Like
I
they just
think
have her. They
she's
have
actually
her.
holding them in like each in one in each hand, and she's saying, no, being a senior is way worse than the situation we're in right now, which is about to be blown up by a cruise missile. Like,
Yeah,
And
I mean-
I literally could not tell if that was supposed to be a joke or whether it was supposed to be commentary.
I don't know, but I think that she's that kind of. I think she's supposed to be that sort of like it's comic relief, definitely, but it's also a commentary on the sort of self-indulging, navel gazing of teenagers. And I do think some of this is obviously cultural because she's specifically calling out things that are very like the college thing, and she talks about the archery thing with Ari and all that stuff. So
yeah, it's all college related, and
yeah.
Yeah. So without understanding like that landscape of college admissions in South Korea specifically, maybe in the greater Seoul region, I don't think we're ever going to have a total handle on this, because I feel like some of my response would be like, go to trade school, become an electrician, you'll be fine.
So now we have finally the meeting of the two groups in the equipment locker. So that's kind of where they all get merged together. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. There's a beautiful scene here with Dae-soo apologizing to Chang-san. He's like, I didn't know that was your mom. I thought that was really touching.
Yeah, that was good. And Daisy's like a good guy. And then they also finally get to eat some food, very slight amount. And they use this for some comic relief too, where, it's like some pass it over, which I'm just like, all right. And I understand why Namra does, but, and then Dae-soo eats like the rest of it. And I know. Like,
I lost it. This joke 100% landed for me. Like I don't know why, but I was just like, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen. Is just Dae-soo shouting down, especially because he gets it from Hari, and so it's like he's treating it almost a little bit like a little gift, like, oh, I'll eat
totally,
this. Yeah.
totally.
But then it just cuts to poor Jun Young behind him, who's just like, I didn't have any.
Yeah, I know.
I cracked up. I thought this was hilarious.
Well, and then there's the whole thing between Dae-soo and Hari where he confesses his love for her, and she's just like, and like loses it.
Her response is to kick his ass. Like that is.
Yeah.
I mean, again, like context, I'm not sure I understand it, but or maybe she's like, inappropriate timing, or I don't know. But
kind of like we've been through all this and now what?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. To me, you are the perfect woman or something. I think this is his introductory line for it. I was kind of cheering for him, but then it turned badly.
Well, and then there's also like with the meshing of the groups, the different sort of like dynamics with the group. The fact that Namra is class president, who's making decisions.
Yeah, who's the alpha?
Who is the alpha in this scenario? Have to say, I'm sort of surprised that it's still the class president and not the woman with the bow and arrow. But she's
the class president of the class below Hari and Jimin. It gives you to make any, or not Jimin.
Exactly. So I'm just kind of like, I don't really know how this is going, and but anyway, and then there's also some comforting and some sort of forgiveness and reconciling between Anjo and Chanson, but they have to make a plan to get out of here, and there's like voting about what to do. And so I thought that was kind of an interesting way to show how the group was going to work going forward. But I still think that there's an awful lot of weight that they give the class president. I don't know. That just feels like kind of ridiculous. But
we also have had a scene of the general of the martial law command watching some of the vlog. And specifically, there's like a scene where he's watching the vlog, and then one of his guys comes in. He's like, "Hey, I hear they're expanding martial law, and we're probably gonna have to leave Hyosan and give up on Hyosan." And that kind of sets some of the table for stuff that's coming later too.
It is, but then he says stuff like, "Oh, well, we should still try to rescue people." Well, you're the one who stopped them rescuing those kids on the roof and wanted to shoot them.
That's a good point.
This is a complete about face in a strange way. I thought that was kind of an odd. Maybe I missed something, but this just feel. And he's like, "Oh, we should get as many people out as possible before we destroy the city. We might be our last chance to rescue people." And it's like, well, buddy, you weren't so excited to do that when you had a bunch of kids on the roof. I don't know. It just felt odd to me.
The assemblywoman is also handed some resignation papers by the party leader.
The party leader. Yeah.
And again, I'm not 100% understanding the scene. I think he's trying to get her to take the political fall for the entire thing. And I'm just like, again, thinking about this from an American perspective. American politicians never admit culpability or resign. So there's definitely no way that this would go down.
No. And then there's also some of my favorite scenes. And I honestly was hoping they would do more. And I kind of was hoping that she would get out. But the scenes with, how they have their little again, this is, kind of figuring out about the virus. And I think, they have Yoonji locked up, and they have this great scene where she kind of breaks out of her restraints and does a very blows on the glass and just writes "I'm hungry" or something. And it just has this insane look. And I was really hoping there would be something even more with this. And they don't really, they do a lot of experiments and show things with the sound with her and our other hapless sort of lab subject in there. But
I was trying to figure out if she's implied to have written it backwards so that he could read it, or if she had written it normally for her, which would make it backwards for him. But I couldn't tell because I don't read Korean.
There you go.
I could not either, but her face and the way she's looking at them, I just thought she was great. And I thought that
if you wrote it backwards, that's impressive as hell. That's hard for even a non-zombified person to do.
Right. But I think that they were just showing their what they're finding out about the virus and how it's acting differently, obviously, in different people. But
but they have discovered they've recreated the virus, right? I don't know if that's in this episode or one of these, but they've basically.
No, it is in this one because they do the thing where they're watching watching the vlog, and then they
recreate it specifically the same way that he did it by scaring a mouse and pulling out its hormones, I guess, and then combining that with something, and then
they do make a really important discovery during all of this, which is that the people who are infected are in fact brain dead. So that kind of sets the I think the moral table for bombing the city in the next episode, because all these people are functionally deceased anyway. They're never coming back.
But they also have the vlog where basically the commentary is that there's no vaccine for this, that this Jonas virus just evolves and evolves and evolves, and so the only way to destroy it is to burn it out, which is how they come up with their plan, I guess. But not before, of course, replicating the virus, because that seems like a good idea. But
by the time we get to the end of this 3-episode run, we are left with a lot of loose ends that obviously the show is not necessarily meant to end here. So recreating the virus is obviously a big one. It's us having that vault of viruses in the basement of the CDC or whatever. So now this is in the Korean version of that.
Yep. And we also have, we also see on Anjo's dad doing the things that he's doing to get to his daughter. He like this was like kind of like a weird. I thought this was like kind of an odd thing. I mean, I think it's fine to show him doing this, but they go through a lot of effort to show him breaking into like this cafe and stealing ribbon to then mark trees in the woods. Like it seemed just like a very roundabout weird thing to put in there. And I know how they use it later, but it just seemed odd to me. Like maybe
I think for him it was like a weird combination of like, I feel like we spent a lot of time on his journey, and yet I was also shocked when he got to the school, because I had no idea he was so close to the school when he was doing all of this stuff. And so I was like, wait, you're here already? Like, how close is the school to the quarantine zone? Because it does not feel like you've been hiking for like days and days. Like, how far can a human walk in the time frame that's shown? Like maybe 20 miles, you know, like it just
there's some serious time issues also with when we get to the drone portion. Like there's a huge time issue that is introduced here. Because they come up with this great plan, and then suddenly they have thousands of drones that are specifically equipped.
Many drones, a
lot of drones
in like a 45 minutes.
Yeah, because the kids are just like hanging out on the scaffolding, like while the drone plan is thought of and executed, right? Like that all happens so fast.
But then you know, I feel like the big set piece in this whole episode is like the gym scene where they pull like get the equipment together. You know, they have ideas, they all like kind of have the plan to sort of have their own like the athletic padding taped around themselves in a ploy to get out of the gymnasium. But you know, I thought that this was an interesting scene, although I feel like more of them would have died in this scene.
So there are things that the last couple episodes do really well that I like a lot, but there's also a lot here that's just starting to frustrate me because of the amount of wheel spinning we've been doing throughout this series. And I'm just like, we've seen them move from just place to place to place to place to place inside the school so many times by now. Like, they've gone from science classroom to announcement room, like sound studio thing, to this side of the place, like rooftop, and I'm just kind of over it. I'm just like, I can't watch another like 20-minute scene of them like trying to move from place to place and failing and having somebody get bit. So I was just very bored through this entire scene until poor Jun Young gets bitten and decides to make the noble sacrifice, which I actually did find very moving. I thought that this was a nice button for this character that's been kind of like, stepped on by the rest of the crew in a lot of ways. For him to get a truly kind of heroic end here was really nice.
And before he goes, he does have like, and I think I'm noticing that the people who get the most story arcs die. But Jun Young is like born again hard in this equipment storage locker. He's lost his glasses, and now he has a badass cut on his face. And he's like he's giving as good as he's getting to Mijin, who's telling him to like mind his manners. And he's like, "You shut up, I'm the boss." That's like, the key to his heroic sacrifice and outro, I guess. Mm-hmm. It's kind of odd that, like, when you consider some of the other characters who survive the entire show, who have almost no arc, like they give these like transformational moments to people who are on their way out. I think that's kind of interesting, because people like Daesu, like he's there and he's funny and he's great, but it doesn't actually change at all through the entire show.
And even up until the end, I mean, there's something that comes up in the final episode where it's funny, but it's just like he's just the same.
Well, and also the way that Jun Young helps after he gets bitten and climbs over the barricade is totally useless. He would have been much more served to just run the other direction screaming and distract all the zombies away from the barricades, but instead he just tries to pull them off one by one, and it's totally ineffectual, so it undercuts his big sacrifice a little bit.
Yeah,
it does. And I agree with you, Kyle. I think that this frustrated me for the same reason that it frustrated you. And the one, as I kind of was thinking about the show, there was like a lot of things that I was hoping to see that I thought that that's where they would end up. They would sort of start evolving the show a little bit. Because I think that this yet another scene of them going from place to place and how they get out is sort of boring. We had the barricade in the classroom. We had the rope down the classroom. Now we have the gym equipment to get out of the gymnasium. And it's all kind of the same theme. I think I would have much rather seen more of like Guinam and Namra getting into it, like really getting into it. Or even honestly, I was really hoping that Yoonji would somehow get out or even before, like I didn't really care about her getting captured. Like I thought that was kind of a waste of her character. I really wanted her and Guinam to have a showdown because it felt like they should. And I feel like those kinds of things would be a lot more interesting to me than some of like this repetitive theme that they keep doing.
Because it takes a long time. I mean, this scene when they're taking the barricades and pushing and doing all this stuff, and then finally Anjo's dad does appear, which is kind of like the thing that saves him here. But it's probably 10 or 12 minutes of screen time. Like it's long. Mm-hmm. And so it's just like this is slow for where the story needs to go. And not to bring it back to my favorite TV show of all time, but Walking Dead decided pretty early on that the zombies themselves, unless they were in some sort of huge quantity, were not that scary, and that they could be dispatched with great ease by the characters, who all just became these killing machines. And one of the reasons they did that is to just avoid repetitive stuff like this and get to the interpersonal things and new characters and settings and stuff like that. And so you spent less on just the mechanics of moving the people around.
Right.
This show never did that.
No,
but it was awesome to see Anjo's dad at the end of this. There was definitely, they had a great moment of their reuniting together, and it was heartwarming. And so I thought that was kind of a nice way to end the episode. And then
you have had Guinam like getting closer to them throughout this,
and he's like tracking them, and unfortunately runs into our sort of like isolated archery guy. But that doesn't, their showdown doesn't really happen as the next episode, right? I think
their showdown does not happen until the next episode.
But I like, again, I think that Guinam is such an interesting character, and so I just wanted to see a little bit more of him rather than some of this kind of ridiculousness. But
Soju arriving and opening that door, because again, like on the repetitive angle, they were once again trapped between a locked door and a bunch of zombies, and we've been in this situation also at the top of the staircase. And just a pair of bolt cutters would have come in real handy for Soju too. And the amount of times we've seen someone trying to break a padlock with anything like a crowbar or a hammer or a hose end. Jesus, can somebody please just have bolt cutters, like Soju especially?
I love that in movies when they're like, they show like some old lock and then someone hits it with a shovel and it breaks, and it's like, there's no freaking way you're gonna break that thing with a shovel. It's made of stainless steel. Like, it's just not possible.
That's that adrenaline strength.
Yeah.
But that scene of him opening the doors, that's like Gandalf showing up at Helm's Deep.
Oh yeah.
And then
the light that they have shining on her, it looks amazing. I mean, again, I really like what they did here from a filmmaking perspective.
I would say there's no time for a lengthy hug between Anjo and Soju here, but they go for it. And frankly, she needs it because she doesn't have much time to spend with him.
No. And then I have to say, though, because then he's there and you have this, I mean, I do think that that's one thing that, again, it's this theme that, the adults aren't going to save them. They're going to have to save themselves. Although in this case, he makes the ultimate sacrifice. I don't like how they get sort of trapped so very easily. And even though they have a lot of different things at their disposal that they could use to get out of here, they just end up trapped in a tennis court. And again, I mean, they use this as a set piece to sort of like, I think, increase the tension and obviously the drama and make it feel very helpless and upsetting, especially what happens in the scene. But it just felt really like senseless, the fact that it happened to me.
It's annoying too that zombies think that road flares look more appetizing than people.
Right.
Because that's how they get off the tennis court, and that doesn't feel right.
I guess they make an interesting noise.
Sure. Yeah, and the noise is a big thing. We also have had now the scene of Guinan approaching the male archer who's like trying to restock his arrows back in the archery gym, I guess. And it would have gone fine for him if he hadn't tried to be bossy to Guinan. If this kid had just said, "Good luck."
When the guy with blood all over his face says, "You'll live because I'm not hungry right now," like maybe just shut up and don't say anything.
I was like, now's not the time to interject anything. Probably silence is your best bet here. But that's not what happens. And like I kind of thought he was going to turn into a halfling. Because he's bravely fighting him off when he dies, but I guess not.
Let's go out like a boss. I will say.
I don't think we actually see him turning though, do we? We just see him kind of collapsing after he tries to shoot that last.
Well, he's got the stuff growing out of the side of his face and the cricky, the clicks, and I do think we get a shot of him in the cruise missile scene.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I did like that scene where he as he's bleeding out and turning, he goes back and manages to knock one last arrow, and then it just sails right over Guinan's head. I thought that was great.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. It's as good an ending as that guy could get as a fairly minor character.
Minjay is his name, or Minjay. So, and I think that this just sort of continues the feeling that Guinan has been treated pretty poorly, or has like this specific, I mean, I think he's earned some of his reputation, but it's just a different set of rules now, obviously. So he just keeps going to track the rest of the group. And so that's sort of like that little scene between them. And then we've got the survivors who are now down to just a few.
So they're in the tennis court, and then Soju distracts him with some flares, and then he dies in that effort of getting them out of the tennis court. So what do we think?
There's a lot of long moments too, where he's like, just go, just go.
But in terms of like number of real-time minutes, not on-screen minutes, but like real-time minutes, like how long do we think Soju and Anjo spend together? Like, is it, I think maybe it might be like 4.
Yeah, it's
minutes. Not it's really, and to me, this is a very disappointing end for what has been literally like a season-long arc. The fact that he's been trying so hard to get to her, and she's always kind of held, I think, some little hope in her heart that he would get there. And then they don't even really, I don't have a problem with him dying trying to save her, but I do have a problem with it happening without them getting the chance to even have any sort of conversation or time together. I'm just kind of like, why did we follow this guy for so long if he was going to go out so quickly? I thought this was very disappointing end to Soju's journey.
He was going to impart something to her, right? Like, I really thought there was going to be something where, I don't know, like he was going to give her some knowledge.
He does. He gives her his flashlight posthumously.
Yes, but not in this particular scene with them. I thought, because we see him doing his weird ribbon thing. Like, I thought that was, I don't know. Anyway, like I found this dissatisfying as well. And I thought that it was a letdown given how much buildup we had to their reunion. So
yeah, I mean, it's supposed to be disappointing, I think, also, but I will grant you, Kyle, that like we've been waiting for this moment for hours of our lives, and it goes so fast.
And it also puts her, Anjo and Chansen, on the same, like they're on the same ground now. They're in the same level because both of them are now alone.
Yep, they've both lost their best friends and their parents.
Right.
And it's messed up. And so, I think Soju tells them to get to the construction site, go through it. Because he's telling them to go to the place where he just got attacked by 2 construction workers. We didn't see how he got out of that situation. But when they get there, that place is so full of zombies.
Well, it's a lot more full than it was before. So it's sort of like, okay, this isn't, I don't know. Like,
they make the baffling decision to go up, which is never a good
the
idea.
right
never the right call to go up in a building which is not completed and has no other reasonable forms of exit, and then they get stuck on the scaffolding outside of the construction site, basically trying to be very quiet and hiding from all the zombies.
I forgot also, there was a scene in the last episode with the NIS, which I assume is like the FBI or the CIA or something, some kind of spy, like Black Men in Black's organization. And they do a presentation to the martial law command, and they say, we're tracking everybody's cell phones in Hyosan. And what we're learning from this is that the zombies are dispersing. They're moving outward because everybody in Hyosan has been eaten. So, there's nobody left. And then the reason I bring that up now is because that was in my head while I'm watching the scene of the construction site, which is just chock-a-block of construction workers, like people who clearly were killed here and then just hung out there. And so that, to me, I'm like, well, I thought that these zombies were all moving outward.
Well, they're not very smart, so they have a real problem with barriers or barricades of any type.
True. That is true.
So maybe they're just literally can't find the door.
There are no doors. There's no walls. This place is pretty open.
I kind of thought that they would have been wandering out with noises or something. Like, I didn't feel like they would hang out here.
Like the helicopters that have been flying over any of this.
Because we've seen what the zombies have been doing elsewhere when those things happen, and they all kind of swarm and go towards that, home in on that thing, whatever the noise might be. So this felt a little weird that this was so full of people. But
okay, so I will say we're about to get to something that I did find extremely satisfying, which is Guinam and Chongsan's rumble. But before we get there, this is all happening simultaneously with the bombing plan, which is moving forward. So they send in, like, as you mentioned, Stuart, like literally thousands of drones to make noise and pull all the zombies to central locations.
Right, but they're also like making announcements and basically like, hey, we're going to bomb the city. So if you're still alive, you should get out, because that's going to really help people that
or get into the subway or something.
Get into the subway or something crazy. It's like,
and a point there, that helicopter never even gets close enough for a normal human to hear it at Hyosan High School.
Right.
Which is one of the locations that they're going to be bombing.
Right.
I think it's pretty, it's checking off a box on a form.
A cursory flyby.
Yeah. Well, we did we gave them a heads up. But the only reason they can hear it is because Namra can hear it because of her super duper hearing, her super duper zombie hearing.
And so the gang now knows that as they're hanging out on the scaffolding that, they're about to get bombed, basically. So that adds a level of tension to everything. But then my guy Guinam just sticks his head out and he's like, yo, dudes, I'm here. And he and Chongsan have a tussle, and I felt so happy for him. He got Chongsan's eye. He sure did it. Like, this guy actually achieved the goal that he's been trying to do this whole thing.
He called out his goal long ago. He got it.
But we should also working on it since episode 4.
But we should also mention that Chongsan got his goal before this rumble, which is that Anjo and Tim, Anjo admitted her love for him, and they, he starts yelling about that he's the happiest guy in school, and then they rumble. And so, but Guinam gets the eye. So that goal was realized, and
I was so happy for him. But then he gets pushed off the scaffolding again. He gets pushed off of a high place again. But before he does, he bites Chongsan's arm.
Yep.
So Chongsan doesn't really have, I think another one of my predictions was that he was going to kind of martyr himself. And he does, but only after being bitten, which I kind of feel like is less impactful than what I had thought.
But he also, he's also somewhat sacrificing himself because he knew the fight with Guinam. He's distracting. He's making a lot of noise. He's making, he's distracting. He's getting all the other zombies in the building. He's trying to get them in another direction so that his friends can get out. So he does kind of do it, but I agree. I thought it was going to be a bigger.
It was pretty martyry. I think, Kyle, you called it. You saw it coming. One of the things about that scene that is a little odd to me is where he says to Anjo right after they've finally reconciled or whatever. He's like, "Don't worry, Anjo. Nobody's going to die here today." I don't think he was considering himself when he was saying that, because he'd already been bitten and he was about to go and martyr himself. But I thought that was a bit of an odd thing to say.
Again, it's the show's like obsessive need to do everything multiple times,
Yeah.
because what he does is literally precisely the same as what Junyoung just did.
Mhm.
Like Junyoung got bit, decided he was doomed, climbed over and distracted some zombies. And essentially that's exactly what Chung-san does here. And so I think I was hoping or predicting that he would make essentially a sacrifice of himself that was not predicated on the fact that he was already doomed to turn.
Right.
You know what I mean?
There's a distinction there. I mean, I would say that what Junyoung tried to do versus what Chung-san does do, very different, because Chung-san actually does, like, the elevator shaft trick is fantastic.
Yeah, it is.
And like those zombies don't get back up again. I don't know how or why. I feel like some of them would probably be fine, especially given Guinam's predilection to being thrown off of high things and getting up.
But he distracts them, so they all fall, create like a little like human tower of bodies in the bottom of the elevator shaft, which is great.
So good. We've also had another scene of the military, the planning. And one of the interesting things that I took away from this was they say the population of Hyosan is 170,000 people. They say 110 are quarantined. I think that they're just missing 3 zeros off of the back of that. I think they mean 110,000 have been evacuated, which seems like a very high number, unless they actually mean only 110 people got out of Hyosan. And then I
think they mean 110,000.
Yeah, that was kind of where I just landed, because the math adds up then. Because then they say there's still 60,000 people or zombies, we don't know that which is which, in Hyosan. So that's what we would be trying to kill with our bombing mission. But I love numbers like that, and zombie shows very rarely give you numbers, right? So I was like, okay, did they really think that they're going to get 2/3 of the city out? I think that's kind of unlikely. I think the way I mean, granted, we didn't see people. We saw the long lines of traffic in some of those interstitial scenes, and we saw Chung-san's mom driving the wrong way. Like, if she had turned around and gone the opposite direction, she probably could have gotten out of town.
Right.
But yeah,
I'm trying to remember back to how long they had between, because the like breakout started in a relatively small geographic space, so it would have taken some time for people to get zombified and essentially walk or run to other parts of the city. So, 110,000 people, that's a pretty big city. So if you just take like Santa Rosa, like if somebody in Coddingtown gets infected, somebody like over, on the other side of town by like Montgomery High School or something is easily going to be able to get out of there.
Yeah. There was, of course, the two vectors. There was the hospital, which is how like greater Hyosan got infected. And then there was the high school.
Yeah.
So,
I believe it.
Yeah, it could have worked, especially if the city has enough like highways going out and not just like one route. But again, I'm just happy to see numbers in shows like this. That makes me happy for some weird reason. Namra's also getting hungry, and this is before the fight with Guinam, I guess. But Namra's getting hungry, and her inner monologue. Have we heard her inner monologue before?
I couldn't remember.
kind of the first time she did that.
Right, on the windowsill.
Yeah. So then this is sort of like, I think, her zombie voice telling her to eat her friends. And I don't know, like, that this is a good, I don't know, alternative, but she keeps like biting herself, and Bear Sue's like, no, just bite me.
It's cool.
Bear Sue, you're like the dumbest guy on the planet. Like,
yeah.
I have no patience for your shit anymore. Like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
I was actually, I mean, I'm jumping a little bit all the way to the end, but Bear Sue and Namra's relationship doesn't seem to have anything in it anymore in the last scene of this show. Like they don't share a moment really. But so I'm kind of glad. I feel like she's also seen through his charming exterior to realize that he's just too idiotic to live.
Right. But he does say, like, because he has some idea that if she bites him, he'll become like her. And I think we've seen that we just really don't know exactly the mechanism, that the reason why people become like them.
And she certainly doesn't take him up on his offer. So.
No, she does not. And then we also see, the sort of the struggle with the military with, the decision that the commander has made. And he has like this really bizarre, like a normal conversation with his wife, and then decides to off himself because of bombing, making the decision to take out Hyosan. And
he's also gone to the assemblywoman and asked her to like set things straight or whatever, or like tell the truth, or I don't know what he's telling her. I'm like, this is the person you feel like should okay. I mean,
sure, yeah,
sure.
And
I don't really agree with him killing himself here.
No,
I mean, I get the weight of it would have been massive, and clearly, like, the show wants us to think that the bombing of Hyosan was this giant travesty in a way, but it's also like the only decision to make.
Well, I think the bigger problem is that he's been such a morally uncompromising character. Like, we have not seen any sort of inner debate or sense that he feels a sense of conflict about anything that he's done the whole time. In fact, he was kind of
those children now.
Those children, yeah. He was explicitly set up as kind of a villainous character, and we never saw him like have any time before this where he took a moment and was like, "Holy shit, what am I doing here? Shooting kids," like kind of thing. So it comes completely out of left field for me, because my read on this character prior to this point was that he was like really enjoying the chance to basically exercise the full weight of the military, because that's kind of how it seemed like. He was happy to have a crisis to work on. So yeah, definitely came out of left field. The guy acted the heck out of it. So I think he did a good job with what he was given, but it didn't really ring true to me either.
Yeah, as soon as he gave that weird unnecessary salute to that one soldier in the hallway, I was like, yeah, he's killing himself. That's it. That you don't have to stop and salute random sentries. You're a general. Just go on with your day. But I was like, yeah, he's checking some more boxes, I guess. We also are getting scenes as the cruise missiles get closer. They keep calling it bombing, but I want to point out these aren't bombs. As the cruise missiles zoom in and start hitting targets, we're having scenes from the playing field where all the zombies have been lured, of some of our favorite character members. So we get Nayeon as a zombie. We hadn't seen her as a zombie. There she is. We see G-Men, a couple of others. I'm trying to think. Probably Gyeongsu. Honorable mentions or people who are absent. Mrs. Park. Don't see her at all. I didn't see her.
I mean, we did get a last scene between her and with her and Anja's dad on the tennis court, and they kind of brushed by each other. So I feel
that was
like
Chong-san's mom.
Oh, sorry, Chong-san's mom. That's right.
Yeah, I like that. I like that Chong-san's mom and Anjo end up in the same place. It's kind of
Anjo's
a nice
dad.
poetic
poetic
thing. But yeah, Mrs. Park does not appear, and the other like big, huge question mark for the entire series also does not appear.
Yep.
And
Mr. Lee.
And I have to believe that they're saving him for the next series, because otherwise his entire like setup is just like they just forgot about it or something, because Mr. Lee does not appear.
I thought he was going to be at the very end, like in some kind of a...
He might be. He might just be off camera. Like there's a whole thing in that final scene of Namra rushing off to talk to someone, right? Well, talk in air quotes. And so that we don't know who those people are that she has alluded to, and it certainly could. I think it's Mrs. Park and Mr. Lee. The teachers, the faculty are who's left.
Yeah, but she specifically says other kids or whatever. So I don't know. Maybe
there are others like me is all she says.
Maybe. But I think we're ready to talk about the finale. And
the last thing I'll say is just visually, I love that the bombs falling really echoes the opening credit, which I thought was a nice little thing. Like we've been seeing this moment in every episode. We just didn't know exactly what it meant, which I thought was nice.
That is cool.
And Chong-san gets his final hurrah and his final sacrifice.
Grabs Guinam and holds him while they both burst into flame.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. And then there's like a final lingering shot of Anjo's name tag in the elevator shaft, right? Also, Kyle, I want to know, how is your wife's listing in your phone? Do you have her listed as wife like the general does?
I do not have her listed as just wife. I thought that was very funny too, actually.
That was funny.
It's just her actual name.
Yep, that's I think how a lot of people do phones, but again, might be context. Who knows?
Right. All right. So let's dive into the finale, which, a few things happen in this, but it was not as satisfying as I was hoping it would be. Though I definitely think it clearly leaves an opening for a sequel. As we were talking about Mr. Lee, I honestly thought he was going to play a bigger part in this ending piece, and he didn't. But really, there's like sort of like two halves of this episode. One is with the students getting out and into like a quarantine camp. But they are first in a neighborhood where it seems like, things are semi-okay until they're not. And so we've got one last little zombie fight, which I guess the purpose of this is to sort of explain what happens with Namra, but it feels like yet another sort of winnowing down of the crew. And I don't know, it just felt like I was sort of disappointed in it. I don't know how both of you felt, but I mean, I thought it was like a cool fight scene, but it was like the same kind of theme.
Oh, I would say it's very different because this is the first scene where we see this combined crew actually kill zombies. They kill 6. They say that there's 11 and then there's only 6, but they actually kill 6. I mean, Namra does most of it, but Daesu gets a kill in there. Mi-Jin continues to be like this unassuming killing machine. I think she kills 3. So it's kind of, or maybe 2, but yeah, to me, this is a different sort of scene. We've talked about how this original 2-5 classroom crew doesn't ever kill. And they've never really been in a protracted stand your ground fight with zombies.
Last episode, last zombie fight, they finally have discovered
I think
they've learned how to survive.
I think the reason why I found it somewhat unsatisfying is that it felt like, I don't know, it just felt unbelievable just in terms of, honestly, because of what we saw them capable of leading up to this. And then suddenly they're very skilled in doing this. And then we have Woojin, basically one last sort of casualty to the
one
zombie.
last honorable sacrifice, right?
Yep, saving his sister. We have
then he gives her a hard time about archery.
Yeah, which is kind of funny.
on his deathbed.
Yep.
Did you really get into nationals?
She's like, yeah, and he's like, liar. And I get the thing I did like the most about this was Namra basically coming into her powers, and she's like snapping necks and doing crazy stuff. And then we also see that her little inner zombie voice is pretty powerful. And she knows she's a danger to her friends, but all they keep talking about is sitting around a fire, which I'm just like, I don't know if that is, I guess that's a thing, but that's all she's like, oh, I've never sat around the fire. They bring up that fire so many times.
That's her. Well, yeah, that's her gateway to having real human emotions.
Friends. Yeah, I guess. But they finally sort of get out of this neighborhood, but Namra just decides to stay behind because she knows that her hunger is gonna overrule at some point, or she doesn't yet have control over it. Seems like most of what she does to control it is to self-harm, which I find disturbing. Like she rams herself into a wall and bites herself again.
Well, then she graduates to, I think, eating zombies is what she's doing the next time we see her.
Yeah, which raises some very interesting questions if the zombies can eat each other.
Right.
Maybe only the half beasts can eat zombies, but like basically the rest of the zombies are ignoring other zombies. But yeah.
But we have, Anjo and Bersu kind of like trying to get her to come back, and she just finally just stays behind.
Well, not before she attacks Anjo. Bersu does not intercede.
No.
And Anjo is like, it's okay, you can eat me. And then it's that, I think, that statement and the fact that Bersu doesn't attack her that maybe gives her enough pause to run away crying, and the two humans rejoin their friends. But later on, Anjo says to Bersu, like in the 3 months later scene, she's like, yeah, you doing that saved all of us.
Right.
I guess we're supposed to believe that if he had attacked her, then she would have killed the two of them maybe and hunted down the rest of the kids.
And then, we have the last sort of they finally make it to like a railway sort of area where we've got soldiers there. And they're rescued by them. Again, I'm just so confused about the plan because nothing has changed, and they're still coming out of a pretty dangerous area. So, I mean, and I guess they are put in quarantine, and the people from Hyosan are in quarantine, and we see this like they do a little sort of like news update where it's like the martial laws ended, but they've been living in the quarantine camp for 4 months, and everybody's still afraid to let them out. So, I guess there's some idea that they might still be infected, but I don't know. I just felt like I thought one of them was going to end up being shot in this particular scene, and they didn't. But and then they have sort of the interviews with the military and
scene though with the train tracks. It's so evocative of Train to Busan's final scene.
I felt like it was definitely an homage to that with slightly less drama, because then they're just like, hey, we're students, and they just like take them in.
Yeah, the only reason they survived at the end of Train to Busan was because the girl started singing, right? And these kids, they're just put their hands up, and they're like, yeah, they're human. They can put up their hands.
Yep.
They passed the test.
To be fair, they're not acting like zombies, so the military can finally distinguish between the two.
They're all crying and having put PTSD visions of all their friends who have died. Like that's how that's going. I thought that the interrogation or interview scenes were good. It's one of those really fast cuts to you think the interrogator's asking one kid a question, but it's actually the next kid in the line. And Anjo's, I did laugh though. And Anjo's like, I'm never going to do anything for an adult ever again. I'm like, you're 17. You're going to be an adult like in 5 minutes.
Yeah. And then we see a little bit of the camp, and we see Mijin still on her college kick, wearing like this weird, like little, like these signs that basically say like, oh, you should help us quarantine kids get into college or something, like something crazy like that.
She's still obsessed with college. Isn't that what she's talking about? Did she get an interrogation scene where she talks about college too?
That's what she said. She said, I should get into college, and we should, so that's her thing.
Yeah.
But
so one note.
I know, very one note. And we see sort of a little bit of what life is like there. We have Anjo running into her dad's old, one of the partners, one of the people from his crew. And, like we see that life in the quarantine camp is, what you would expect it to be.
They all have a change of clothes. They all look quite stylish.
Yep. But they're not like, it's not like they're all hanging out together. She's definitely kind of, because when she runs into Bear Sue, it's sort of like, oh yeah, I kind of want to see the others, but not, because it'll bring up painful memories and all that stuff. And so, but they talk about the fact that she's seen fire like on the roof of their old school. And so I think they're pretty sure who that is. But she's like, oh, let's just go alone. But of course, Bear Sue brings in the rest of them.
I like this. This touched my heart.
This is designed in a lab to touch your heart, Kyle.
Yeah, exactly. Like all the kids, she comes around the corner and everyone's there, and it's like, I told you to, not tell anybody. Well, I only told him, and then I thought that was great, and I like that.
It was a very like Goonies kind of a scene.
It's also one of these. It's one of the only scenes that gives some of these characters any resemblance of a story arc too. Like, oh, you're choosing to come. I mean, they were all kind of tight throughout their ordeal, but like choosing to go back over the fence. First of all, I think it's actually like a legit symptom of PTSD, but like Hurt Locker style, right? But it's also it's like for Ryo Hyung, the timid girl, to do it is like her only real story arc at all is the fact that she's willing to go back into the ship. Well,
that, and she gives Dae-soo a hard time about everything. So in this case, he puts the empty candy wrapper and then is like, oh, I'll bring a whole box next time. So he's, they still have their like weird banter going on. But
they're not together even. Like there was all that shipping a couple episodes ago for Dae-soo and her, and the show weirdly doesn't even do anything with it.
Nope. And then they end up all back on that roof, seeing the fire. Like one of them makes they're like walking through the ruins of their school, and one of them is like, oh, who made the fire? And someone's like, oh, maybe one of those weird YouTubers who like haunted houses. Like, it was like, it's such a weird comment.
Yeah. That was weird. Anjo's like, no, idiots, it's clearly Namra, and then it is Namra, and it's been 3 months and 17 days, they said on the news. And Namra's school uniform is pristine.
it's pristine. She's got, some healing of the wounds that we saw before. So she's got that weird head wound, but it's almost healed.
Now they're just like those anime style little X's on her on her brow and on her cheek. I thought
she may have found some stash of uniform somewhere, or maybe she's stealing them off of other zombies or something.
In the firebomb school.
Oh yeah, in the firebomb school.
And she implies that there's others like her. She makes some weird comment about them not being fully zombie, not being fully human, not being fully a monster.
This scene with Namra is also like the most expressive she's ever been. She's smiling, she's making eye contact, she's saying things that like mean that she has an emotional response, which she's been so repressed as in her dialogue and her her acting this whole show. This is right. Kind of like a completely different scene for this character.
And she and Anjo make up, and Anjo's like, it's all right that you were gonna eat me, it's all good. And
that's significant too, because suddenly it's Anjo and Namra who have this like tightest relationship, right? And they worked on that in the woods on their way out of the school the previous episode, but here again, like Anjo is reinforcing the fact that like we are going to be friends no matter what. And then Bearsu kind of gets one in there too. He's like, yeah, me too, I'll be your friend,
right?
Girlfriend.
I didn't feel like they got there enough with Anjo and Namra to make this hit, or like it just didn't. I didn't feel like they had bonded them enough or done enough together in this entire series to make this be realistic. But I think that's fine, I suppose. But I mean, I think Anjo insisting that she wants a Namra to come back. I mean, she knows what's going to happen to Namra if she comes into that camp. They've seen what's been happening. So this seems kind of ridiculous to me, that's the idea, that you're going to come and you're going to be accepted by you. No, she's not. They'll use her as like a guinea pig in the lab.
And she'll eventually get hungry and eat someone.
Right. So I just thought that was kind of strange. But maybe I guess they were trying to just show that Namra was accepted by Anjo no matter what. But and she, we never see the other half zombies or how many there are. She's very vague about that. But she does have cool superhero powers that we see, where she just like jumps off the roof, like, like Kill Bill style.
Yeah, she has a nice slow-mo jump off the roof and everyone's like, whoa. Yeah. Which is something Guinan started doing a lot at the end too, was just jumping off of high places because he can mend his broken legs at the bottom or something.
Mm-hmm.
He learned that the hard way.
Yeah.
Right.
And the final scene is like that slow sort of pan between all of these kids' faces. The thing that they don't do, which I would have expected, is all run to the edge of the roof to look down. Instead, they're all kind of looking at the horizon, which I'm like, you're on the roof of the school that you can't see anything from where you are.
Right. It's dark.
What are you looking at?
What are you looking at? It was weird. But yeah, and that is the wrap up of the series. So I think clearly they're going to try to do another one. But that's it. But overall, I would say I really enjoyed the whole thing. I mean, I thought it was great. I did think that there were I think it could have been edited down, and I think there were things I would have liked to see more of. And I think it's tough when you have so many different, you have such a large cast and so many different things that you're trying to show in the storyline. But I felt like the storytelling could have been a little tighter.
This could have been 8 or even 6 episodes probably, right?
Yeah,
I agree with that. Do we want to do like a 0 out of 10 or A to B or A to F grades?
I mean, I would say 10 out of 10. I love this stuff. I would watch, even though it was long. This is just the part of the critical process is like, okay, yeah, this wasn't 100% great, but this was a great show. I would say that I wish there had been a little more effort put into story arcs. If you're going to have 6 people survive, right, they all need to have something specific that we can latch onto. And a few of these characters didn't get anything other than just like Bearsu. What is this character? He's like a hero. He's a hero, but he has 0 character growth. If anything, he like becomes less than by the end of the show.
He becomes a lot less. And I also think, you have characters when you do have a big cast like this. I know that it is hard to develop the story and the backstory of the characters. I think they tried to do a lot of that. And we saw it with their sort of like video wills. But even, for example, Woojin, we just don't know a lot about him other than he has his sister and that she's coming to find him. We don't have a lot about him. And I do think it does hit when he dies, but not in the way that it would have if they had built him up a little bit more.
Or just had a couple fewer red shirts. Yeah.
Right.
Like
And so,
G-Min doesn't really serve a purpose. Her
Right.
death does not have enough of an impact.
right. And I mean, I don't think you care enough,
Yeah.
honestly. And especially given that she kind of acts like, I mean, she's panicked and scared, but you know, she leaves her friend to die. So but they spent a lot of time on much more time on her death than they spend on her in the rest of the entire show.
And they spent way more time developing, not like hardcore, but they kind of developed her over Woojin, right? And over
Right.
Daesu, over Junyoung even.
Right.
And then they did not use that time to capitalize on her exit, I think.
Right. But I agree with you, Stuart. I think for me, this was a successful show. I really enjoyed watching it. I definitely enjoyed talking about it with both of you. So, you know, the way we like kind of like analyze and tear apart certain things, like that's more just when you've got this fantastic thing that you're doing, just sort of questions. And I get that this must have been an incredibly arduous project.
Yeah.
Especially like film editing, because if this is the final product, imagine how many hours of footage that they had to like parse through, right? And like
Bananas. Yeah.
it was totally crazy. And keeping in mind that this was done during the pandemic. So so overall, I really loved it. I would love to see a sequel, though I would like to see the storylines a little tighter on that point. And maybe the cast would be slightly smaller just because they've narrowed things down.
Well, if they start with 6, they can have 3 at the end and it's going to be okay, right?
Right.
They started with like 15, like it was too many.
Right. And I also, I did want to see our detective a little bit more, and we just kind of lost him.
We had, no resolution for Detective or Seoul University. Sabin, the little 4-year-old girl, you see her sobbing at the beginning of this episode. Nothing. Baby, Chongsan chicken baby, nothing.
I mean, they're all alive. They got rescued, right?
Yeah,
but we just don't know what happened to them.
Yeah, like their stories are completely unresolved, or they're resolved, I guess, in that they survived the zombie apocalypse. But this final episode kind of serves as both an epilogue and to set up season 2 if they're going to do that. But I think again, like they just had too many stories they were trying to tell, and yet not enough actual story in those stories in some cases.
But I would have also liked it. Maybe there's a reason why. Like I would have liked to see. I really thought that Sean Sen's mom was going to be a have. What is it? What do they call it? A half B. But or even I thought Anjo's dad might do that, but I guess they just can only have one, which is the Mr. Lee, and maybe Mrs. Park. We don't know yet. But I just but again, I really loved watching this. I thought this was fantastic. More, please.
Yeah.
What about you, Kyle?
I'd probably give it like a 6.5 out of 10. Like
that's the Russian judge.
I liked it. I enjoyed it. It's not like I was sitting there while I was watching it being like, oh, this is such a slog or whatever. But like, it's not great television, and it has a lot of flaws, as we've discussed here throughout. So I 6.5 out of 10 is not a bad score. It's pleasantly enjoyable. It was a breeze, and I would watch a second season, and I would talk about a second season with you guys. But wasn't Deadwood,
What is?
What do you guys think about the online rumor mills are that Changsan has somehow survived?
Lol.
I would think, given that we saw Guinam, definitely like there was some immolation there.
Guinam was immolating. That's maybe the point of the rumor, is that Chongsan was not.
They did not directly show that, but I feel like it would have been really hard for him to get out of it. Yeah. I actually did think that they might be going there with the last scene. Like I thought maybe it was going to pan and he would be in the background, but they didn't do that.
That would be such a Glenn escaping under the dumpster maneuver.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know if we can do that.
Well, it seems like the people who are talking about this online are like essentially convinced that because they did not, show Chongsan bursting into flame himself, that he like used Guinam's body as like a human shield or something, and is a half B hanging out with Namra. But I don't know if that's true or not. We'll have to find out when the second season comes out. But it seems like they're pretty much like the rumor mill seems to be essentially convinced that that's the case.
Well, I guess we shall see. I didn't see that it got renewed, and I did try to find information about it. Did either of you find anything about that?
No.
No.
I feel like the show got on my radar very shortly before it was on Netflix too. So I don't know that I'm expecting to hear. It seems like it's just one of these things that was suddenly it was there.
Well, and I don't know what the cadence is of, American TV used to work on this very predictable cadence for seasons, but it doesn't seem like that's happening anymore in the streaming world. And then also I have no idea what Korean TV is like. So maybe 2 years will go by and then it'll just somehow get renewed again. Who knows?
Well, it's also a little bit through Netflix. So it's whether they decide to also maybe go in. So it's unclear if they were the ones that did the bigger investment or if something they bought after the fact. Like, I don't know if that was the case. So we'll have to see what happens with that. But I don't think that they even, like when Squid Game was such a huge hit, they waited a while before saying that there would be something else about that. So anyway, we'll have to see. I think we'll have to wait a bit to see if it's going to happen, but I have a feeling it will, because it was really, it's doing pretty well as far as we know, though they do keep some of those analytics undercover, so tough to say. But I'd also have to, like, the amount of money that it must have taken to make this. And I tried to find more numbers about how much it was, but it must have been incredibly expensive to make this show. So to have to commit to that for a second season is a pretty big lift, but maybe warranted if it's doing really well. And I think it will continue to do well. I mean, it's still popping up, but maybe it's obviously like they know what I like to watch. So maybe it's just continuing to pop up because of me, but we'll have to see. But anyway, it was great talking about this with both of you. If any of our listeners have comments about the last 3 episodes, about the series in general, feel free to email us at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. You can tweet at us, reanimatedpcast, or you can leave a note on the show website, reanimatedpodcast.com. Kyle, thanks so much for joining us for this sojourn.
Most definitely. It's been enjoyable.
It's always great having you on. I know we cannot ask you about any Walking Dead stuff, but maybe if there's other things in the future you're interested in chatting about, we can do this again.
Most definitely.
Yeah. Thank you, Kyle, for coming along. And in the days ahead, I hope that we can talk about some more stuff. We'll keep you in the loop. Toodles.
Catch you on the flip side.